welcome back to another Woodtones video. So last time I got all the braces on the base top that I wanted, and this time it's just a matter of going through and shaping them all down to start bringing out the tone of the top that I want. So first things first, just have to add a little patch onto the X-brace joint just to ensure that it stays on strongly and it won't separate later with any sharp impact or anything. So you can use either a knife or a saw for this. I'm using just a little hand knife I got to carve out a piece out of some thin mahogany. And you just glue that on the top. I'm using hide glue for this, but tight bond will work. Don't use super glue just because it's not strong enough and it's also somewhat of a brittle glue. So if you do strike the top there or something, if it does get hit, super glue will let go with impact. So that is just a bad idea all around. Use tight bond, hide glue, anything like that should work. So next step is actually shaping the braces here. Starting with the finger joints, you're going to need a chisel and a ruler and a pencil for this. And for the finger joint, for the finger braces here, since the top is going to be under a lot of tension, instead of shaping them down or carving a lot off, I'm going to leave them pretty big and just taper half of it. So measure out halfway down each brace, and then I chamfer over the edges a little bit and make them more into like a steeple shape just to remove some of the weight of the top, help it to vibrate a little bit more without losing a ton of strength. And then from there you can, after carving them all into steeples, then you can chamfer the end or slope the end down to absolutely zero. You want to make sure that it is zero, just because if the top is struck and the braces are thick at the ends, then the braces will peel away from the top, and the technical term for that is bad. So now that the finger braces are shaped, it's time to move on to the tone bars. Once again, marking out the ends where I want to radius the slope down to the top, and of course making sure to slope them down to zero. But for these, I'm going to come in 2 inches from the longer braces and split the small tone bar in half for the slope down, and once again steepling them too. Make sure as you're working on the braces and carving down the edges that you don't nick the top. That is pretty bad, especially with a softer wood like cedar. As you nick the top, it starts cutting some of those grain fibers, and if there's any tension or compression there, any cut grain fibers won't resist pulling or pushing. So that will be a good place for the top to start buckling and cracking and breaking. So take care not to nick the top and just go slowly, and also pay attention to how the braces are cutting. You'll notice as you start carving into them, sometimes the wood will have some run out in it, aka the grain lines aren't completely straight with the piece that you got. So as you're carving, the grain lines will start splitting and it'll start cutting deeper and deeper into the piece, probably deeper than you want. Just pay attention to that and follow the wood. So next up on the list is carving down the fingerboard extension brace. This one sits directly under where the fingerboard sits over the top of the guitar, so it's got to be pretty strong. For this, I'm going to mark out exactly halfway on the brace, so when I steeple it over, it doesn't end up looking slanted or anything like that. It'll look directly like a good isosceles triangle. So marking out the center, and then again chamfering down the top. Because there are other braces leaning up against this one and glued to it, I am not going to chamfer areas where the other braces are glued to. I want that point to be strong. So the big area in between the 2 small supporting braces you can chamfer over. But the other areas, since they're small enough, I'm going to leave them, just add a little extra support. And if I carve away there, I'm a little afraid that it might tear out or might follow some run out and might destroy that part of the brace and really weaken it. Especially when you're dealing with a 5-string bass, you want the top to be strong enough to hold it and you don't want it imploding on you. And now we're on to shaping down the X brace, what is considered the heart of the guitar itself. For this, because it is the main string resistor, main load holder, whatever you want to call it, this you don't want to take down as much as other braces. For this, again, you're going to chamfer over a little bit, but don't scallop it for this, especially the area around the sound hole, just because that area does have a large piece of wood missing, so it's going to be incredibly weak. Just chamfer over the edges a bit so it can resist the tension while allowing the top to vibrate a little bit more. And on the very ends of the braces here, you're going to want to again slope them down only on the ends that are opposite the sound hole, more towards the bottom end of the guitar. Just because this area isn't pulling as much or isn't resisting as much tension, it can afford to vibrate a little more by sloping down the braces down to 0 again. But for the ends up by the sound hole, those ends you want to leave long still, you want to leave them thick. Those are going to be set into the kerfing of the guitar, which I'm going to get to in a later video. So just leave them thick for now. So speaking of the sound hole, it's now time to cut it out, and the tool that I use for this is in fact a hole saw. What I've found works really well for this is as long as you can start the hole in the correct location, you can run the hole saw backwards so it doesn't tear out all the fibers of the top, and it will cut a smooth and clean hole. Just as long as you go halfway through the wood first, running it backwards at a slow speed of course, and then flip it over, drill through the other side, it'll cut out the hole really cleanly, won't tear out any fibers, and it'll leave you a nice smooth looking hole that's the size you want in an exact circle. I'm not adding a rosette to this instrument. I kind of like the look of the bare wood, plus with the maple and everything else going on, it should look alright. And one benefit to using the hole saw method is that you now got yourself a handy dandy coaster. How neat is that? So now that the braces are shaped down to a rough guesstimation of where they're supposed to be, it's time to actually listen to the top and see what it sounds like. So for this, I found you can either pick it up by the top bout, by one of the edges, or by the corner actually, or by the sound hole. It's good if you do both, I've found, because it gives you a little bit clearer picture of what's going on. But just tap your finger all over the top and listen to the sound. Listen for any parts where it sounds flubby, listen for any parts where the tone changes. You want a nice even tone the whole way around. So for this top, I noticed that it started to sound a bit like sheet metal, very thin sheet metal, kind of that flubby, whooshy sound, right where there wasn't any braces, right above the finger braces, but below where the X brace started. So for that, I'm going to add in a brace there, just a thin little thing to help spread out the tone more, help stiffen up the top in that area, help it to stand up to the tension, and to transmit the sound a little bit better. So it's going to be essentially another finger brace off the X brace, but this time instead of curling up off the X brace, it's going to slope down off the top bars. So I'm just using some of my spruce for this and making sure that it butts up nice and smooth to the X brace and just gluing it on. And of course, just like the other braces, it's going to be shaped down and trimmed down, steepled and sloped at the end. So now that I got all the braces shaped and I'm happy with the tap tone of the top, there's one last thing to do, and that is of course sign it. Gotta put my name in there just so it's marked as mine. And of course, also just for the fun of it, I choose to incorporate a joke in each guitar. Each instrument that I make, each one's different, comes up on the spot, and usually it's just a dad joke, but it's just a fun little thing to help set my instruments apart and hopefully make the day of the person who ever has to fix it. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. You can check out some of my other woodworking videos here, or some of my music videos involving the instruments I made right here. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this, and like this video if you did truly like it. It would mean a lot to me. Thanks so much for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye!